The Nova Scotia shooter case has hallmarks of undercover operation off of Maclean's magazine. A surprising article here suggesting the good old denturist Gabriel Wortman might have been an RCMP informant and got paid a whopping $475,000 just prior to pulling off the you-know-what event. So yeah, isn't this interesting? When you wonder what's going on here, the withdrawal of nearly $500,000 in cash by the man who killed 22 Nova Scotians in April matches the method the RCMP uses to send to confidential informants and agents, sources say. Gabriel Wortman, who is responsible for the largest mass killing in Canadian history, if you believe your media, withdrew the money from a Brinks depot in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia on March the 30th. So 3-3 right there. Stashing a carry-all filled with $100 bills in the trunk of his car. I mean, how do you ever can imagine going to the bank and taking out $500,000 in cash? What? According to a source close to the police investigation, the money came from CIBC Intria, a subsidiary of the chartered bank that handles currency transactions. Sources in both banking and the RCMP say the transaction is consistent with how the RCMP funnels money to its confidential informants and agents, and it is not an option available to private banking customers. The RCMP has repeatedly said that it had no special relationship with Wortman. Now, it's so much with this thing. I don't do the shootings anymore, right? You know what happens when Jeff C covers shootings. Usually I lose my channel, sort of thing, because they don't want you to question whether these things are happening or not. But there were so many crazy things. I did cover it. I did a few videos on it, but I was like, I'm not going to bust this thing wide open, sort of thing. But one of the biggest things, of course, was the whole RCMP vehicle. It's like, how did he get the vehicle to, like allegedly that he got the RCMP vehicle and he was able to perfectly get the right decals, and that became a whole story in itself. How did he get the decals? Well, he ordered them off eBay or something like that because he had the RCMP logo and he had bought the cars beforehand. And then there was the shot. I want to see it if we have it here. The shot of the car, the RCMP vehicle. This is the one they show everywhere, which I covered, right? So why do they give such a crappy resolution? Let's see if we can get a better resolution of that. I'll just change my shirt. RCMP. Whoop. P car. There we go. So let's see if we can get a better. Yeah, this one here. So I'm going to see if I can open this in a new tab here. And there you go. So people were questioning this photo, including myself, and the 28B11, which we traced to, which potentially could be the vaccine or whatever they're trying to make using mice with human cells in them. So they're creating these mice to test their coronavirus stuff on, and one of them had the code name 28B11, which I showed on my channel, which is actually being used. So they're using these mice that are like, they have all human DNA and genes in them, but they're mice, and that's how they test the vaccine. So these specific mice and the trials that they were using were coded with this number. So that's something that I found. You can look that up. Hopefully it's still up on my channel. Maybe it's just coincidental, but like, this was the image that they showed, and then they put this, they wanted you to solve that code. So, and then this too, it's like, why is this, and who took this photo? Right? All these questions, right? But this is the whole story, that he had this RCMP car and he had the decals, which they said he got off eBay or whatever, right? And they're like, how did he get the decals, and how did you do this? And he had been, according to the story, the story, you ever read the Brothers Grimm? According to the story, he was purchasing for years old RCMP vehicles and then souping them up and whatever, spiffing them up and shining them and cleaning them and, I don't know, driving around pretending to be a cop. That's the story, right? That's the story. So, and then they had the whole story with the Heidi Stevenson character, the angelic sort of RCMP officer, and they show her with all the children, and she's so sweet, and she got killed because he rammed her with his car. And they said that his car, they couldn't figure it out. It was like, how did he manage to do so much? Oh, he had this grate that he installed in the front of the car, sort of thing. So if we go back here, can we go back? Where were we? There, yeah. They show that somewhere along the lines. But the whole thing is fishy as F-U-C-K. A lot of Nova Scotians actually contacted me on this, saying how fishy and how people are extremely skeptical about this whole story. And then what is the result? Well, it's the police state, right? And there is the character. I mean, it's like out of a movie, right? Look at this. Look at the face. Look at how perfect looking this person is. It's like the stereotypical female RCMP, selfless mother, I'm not saying she didn't die or anything, but, there's the denturous. And we covered the whole smile thing, because on the night that it happened, and they said, they were saying in the CBC and the CTV, they were talking about a guy that gave smiles to everyone. Gabriel Wortman, of course, white man, Wortman, and that was his establishment. He had this freaking dentures thing with the big smile. So when the story broke and it happened, there was Lady Gaga, and she was singing the song Smile that very night on the whole globalist stay-at-home thing. Let's see if we can find that for you, just to show you here. Lady Gaga, stay-at-home smile. Right? She sang, this is what she sang here. The song Smile. With Smile, you see? Together at home with Smile. So that was the same day that the whole thing happened. So more of their coding, as you see the one world with the same red circle that you see at the TEDx and all that, the home, the Pentagon sort of thing, right? So evil. These people, I swear. So, the whole thing is fishy as F-U-C-K. And the story itself, because let's just be hypothetical. YouTube community, RCMP, all you CSEC and all that, just calm down, stop taking down my videos. But let's just think about this hypothetically. If you were going to stage something, wouldn't it be the perfect guise to have someone posing as an RCMP, so that anybody that would witness anything would just see RCMP cars and say, wow, I saw an RCMP car. It's like, oh, but it was a guy who actually imitated an RCMP guy, made his own RCMP car, fixed up his own RCMP. So it fits the narrative perfectly that you get. It's like the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center shooting, the one with all the snowbanks and the sirens. That's what you saw, of course. And the guy that did the killing was an identical twin. And if you don't stop to think for a second, that's a bit fishy. You're just not functioning upstairs, because that would be the perfect guise to say, hey, I thought you were the guy that killed all those Islamic people. No, that's my brother. He's in prison now, He's bad one. I'm much better, like these stories, and I covered a lot of the older ones, like the Moncton shooting and the Ottawa shooting, and I put shooting in huge quotation marks, if you know what I'm saying. So this thing just stinks to high heaven. I love this one too. It's like, what are they doing? They're crawling on the ground. Hey guys, you see my bottle cap around? It's just silly, right? It's just what they do, though. So anyways, let's look back here. Where were we? Yeah, there. So, this is some of the footage that they show you. There he is, the Wortman with the bag of cash. So the sources in both banking and RCMP say the transaction is consistent with how the RCMP funnels money to its confidential informants and agents and is not an option available to private banking customers. So I read that twice just because I think it's very interesting. The RCMP has repeated that it has no special relationship. And some of the stuff that we saw you with Gabriel Wortman too, with the, like, there was this woman who was like, I don't know, in the Yukon or something. And she was making all these claims that he had stalked her and he had, I don't know, brutalized her or whatever. But there was no evidence. And and then the RCMP was asked about it and they said, well, we have no information on that sort of thing. Like there was never any sort of, and this woman had the shakes. Do you remember? I showed this. I was laughing my ass off because they showed her and she's looking at her smartphone and then all of a sudden they start interviewing and she has these like crazy shakes, like she has severe Parkinson's, like trying to invoke that she's having horrible memories about this guy because people are dumb, right? People watch the television. They say, oh my gosh, Gabriel Wortman. What was his name? Wortman? He's a Wortman. Anyways, court documents show that Wortman owned a New Brunswick registered company called Berkshire Broman. The legal owner of 2 of his vehicles, including one of his police replica cars. I'm talking about the replicants last night. Whatever the purpose of that company, there is no public evidence that would have been able to move large quantities of cash. So there's no public evidence that it would have been able to move large quantities of cash. I mean, who was able to do that? Do you know anybody in your life that has ever moved like $500,000 in cash? You go to the bank, they look at you like you just came from Mars or something. So Wortman also ran his own denturist business. Of course, he was in the business of giving smiles, and there is no reason to believe that it would also require him to handle large amounts of cash. If Wortman was an RCMP informant or agent, it could explain why the force appeared not to take action on complaints about his illegal guns. I mean, and his assault on his common law wife. So, you know, now they're playing that angle. They're saying, yeah, looks kind of, maybe he was, but, you know. So it's like, well, maybe the whole thing is just a, you know, complete concoction. You ever thought of that, McLean's? Of course not. A Mountie familiar with the techniques used by the force in undercover operations, but not with the details of the investigation into the shooting, says Wortman could not have collected his own money from Brinks as a private citizen. There's no way a civilian can just make an arrangement like that, he said in an interview. He added that Wortman's transaction is consistent with Mountie's experience in how the RCMP pays its assets. I've worked a number of CI cases over the years, and that's how things go. All the payments are made in cash. To me, that transaction alone proves that he has a secret relationship with the force. A second Mountie who does not know the first, well, he doesn't know the first one, but has also been involved with CI operations, also believes that Wortman's ability to withdraw a large sum of money from Brinks is an indication that Wortman had a link with the police. That's tradecraft. I remember watching the show The Wire, and they had the hardest time trying to get like $30K because they wanted to do some, you know, drug bust sort of thing, but they needed the cash to you know, pull it off, undercover sort of thing. But like $500K. So the Mountie said, explaining that by going through CBI Intria, the RCMP could avoid typical banking scrutiny, as there are no holds placed on the money, honey. That's what we do when we need flash money for a buy. We don't keep stashes of money around the office. When we need a large sum of money to make or buy something, that's the route we take. I think the Brinks transaction, you proved with a single fact that he had a relationship with the police. He was either CI or an agent. So again, and think about this. If this 100% proves or can be proven that he's a RCMP informant and he got paid this huge amount of cash just before the whole thing went down, what does that say about the RCMP? And who's going to investigate the RCMP? Good question. Seriously, folks, who's watching The Watchmen? So this is the video they're showing here? I haven't seen this. Wortman arrives at Brink's yard. He's in the white car and he's all dressed in black. White and black, black and white, of course. You know the symbolism. And here he's getting his money. WTF, folks. Could you imagine you could just walk away with $500,000 doing something like this? He's getting his bag, or what's he doing? Okay, that's not where the transaction happens, I guess. Wortman arrives. Oh no, he drives. Okay, so that's the entrance, and then he goes in. Okay, they don't show that. Okay, maybe it's down here. Wortman inside the Brinks. Let's take a look at this one. And what would he have done with $500,000 too, eh? You think about it? Is he on a beach in Tel Aviv? That's it? That's it? He just walks out. $500,000 clams. Just like that. Doop doo doop doo doop doo doo. He's like, I'm gonna go on eBay now and get those decals. Yeah. Damn. This is one hell of a tale, eh, folks? And what's so important about it, the whole thing, is what they're trying to accomplish through it. The federal government wants to disarm Canadians, right? A Canadian retail banking expert, speaking on the condition that they are not to be identified, says it's unlikely that Wortman was cashing out his own savings when he collected the money from Brinks after the money was transferred from CIBC in Tria. When you come into a branch and you want a ton of cash, then I say you've got to give us a couple days. That's what I would think. And we put it in our Brinks order. I order the money through Brinks. Then the money arrives. You come back into the branch. I bring you back into the room. And I count the money for you. It's like, I was just thinking of Tony Montana. Take it to the limit. Bringing the big bags of cash in. The banker's starting to freak out. Sending someone to Brinks to get the money. I've never heard of that before. The reason is, if I'm a banker and you've deposited your savings in my bank branch, I'm responsible for making sure the money goes to the right person. If you want this money, I'm going to verify your identity and document that. I can't do that if I'm transferring the money to Brinks. In response to a detailed question from Maclean's about the transaction, CIBC spokesperson replied via email, "Our hearts and thoughts are with the families and the entire community as they deal with this senseless tragedy and loss. Unfortunately, we are not able to comment on the specific client matters." Brinks did not reply to the questions about the transaction. The banking expert speculates that the RCMP could keep transactions relatively quiet by going through the Brinks instead of a bank transfer money to a confidential informant or agents. You can imagine that if someone comes in with large sums of cash, that stuff is not kept quiet. You don't want that. Maybe that's what RCMP was doing, is they thought they could keep things quieter by simply transferring funds via Brinks. At a press briefing on June the 4th, Nova Scotia RCMP Superintendent Darren Campbell seemed to rule out the possibility that Wortman was a confidential informant for the force. Gunman was never associated to the RCMP as a volunteer or auxiliary police officer, nor did the RCMP have any special relationship with the gunman of any kind, and yet he collected RCMP cars and other RCMP stuff. Yeah. RCMP Operations Manual, a copy which was obtained by Maclean's, authorizes the force to mislead all but the courts in order to conceal the identity of informants and agent sources. The identity of the source must be protected at all times except when the administration of justice requires otherwise, i.e. a member cannot mislead the court in any proceeding in order to protect source. A spokeswoman for the Nova Scotia RCMP declined to further comment after Maclean's reported on the financial transaction. This is still an active, ongoing investigation, said Corporal Jennifer Clark in an email on Friday. All investigative avenues and possibilities continue to... Hey, guys, do you look at the Hope film? Oh, you can't say that. Can't say that. Wow. So all possibilities continue to be explored, analyzed, and processed with due diligence. This is to ensure the integrity of the investigation is not compromised. We cannot release anything more related to your questions. Maclean's reported earlier this week that sources say, Pentagon officials say, Wortman had a social relationship with Hells Angels and with neighbor Peter Allen Griffin, interesting name, who recently finished serving part of a 7-year sentence for drug and firearm offenses linked to La Familia. You've heard of these guys, eh? The Mexican cartel? Sources say Griffin printed the decals that Wortman used on the replica RCMP cruiser he used in his rampage. Wow. What a tall tale. You ever guys read like the Brothers Grimm stories? Sources say that RCMP in New Brunswick, not Nova Scotia, recently took over operational controls of investigations into outlaw bikers in the Maritimes, which means the Nova Scotia Mounties may not have been aware to any connection to Wortman. The different provincial elements coming into play. You wonder about New Brunswick too, because if you don't know, New Brunswick is almost completely controlled by the Irving oil family. Talked about that way back when several times. Now, the RCMP operations manual identifies two types of sources: informant sources and agent sources. A law enforcement said the force uses Brinks to make large payments to agent sources. Non-informant sources. Informants are never paid more than a couple hundred at a time, said a person briefed on the RCMP operations. Anything over $10,000 is agent money. Agents typically have greater responsibility than informants. Only officers who have received specialized training are allowed to handle agents. An agent source is a person tasked by investigators to assist in the development of target operations, said the manual. Direct involvement and association with target may result in her becoming material and compellable witness, i.e. a source used to introduce Undercover Operations Act, Undercover of the Night Act, as a courier for controlled deliverers, or act in place of an RCMP undercover operator by obtaining evidence. If the money was a transfer from the RCMP to an agent, there would be a paper trail through FinTrack, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada, which tracks large cash transactions and suspicious transactions. Brinks does the FinTrack paperwork, saying it comes from us. It's from a charter bank, and the RCMP liaison at FinTrack signs off, handles the paperwork, said a source briefed on the system. The RCMP guy clears it, or they refer it for further investigation. They manually clear those FinTrack reports coming from Brinks related to paid agents. The RCMP operations manual requires officers handling confidential informants and agents to send reports to the director of the Covert Operations Branch of National Headquarters. Headquarters Media Relations Office said in an email Friday that Campbell's statement that the force never had a special relationship with Wortman still stands. The Attorney General of Nova Scotia, former RCMP Staff Sergeant Mark Fury, has said the province is in talks with Ottawa about a joint federal-provincial inquiry or review of Wortman's murderous rampage. Well, what good is that going to be if the RCMP are all involved? Fury's office did not reply before the deadline to a question about whether the terms of the inquiry would allow inquiry counsel to pierce the powerful legal privilege that attaches to confidential informants. Family members of the victims have complained the process is dragged out. As calls for inquiry mount, so does speculation about what happened among both the general public and the RCMP. And then one former Mountie says he doesn't understand why Wortman would turn against Mounties if they were paying him. They just pay him half $1,000,000 and he goes and he actually kills an RCMP and then he kills like 21 other people or something. I mean, come on, seriously. What seems inconsistent to me is why are they going to bite the hand that feeds you? If he's getting money, and that's a lot of money for an agent or CI, that part doesn't make sense to me. The former investigator pointed out if Wortman was acting for the RCMP and receiving that amount of money, he would eventually be expected to testify. If he was an agent, he should show up on a witness docket. But another Mountie says, this guy always wanted to be a Mountie. He was acting like a Mountie. He was doing the Mountie things. It's clear that something went wrong. Yeah. Wow. What are you going to say? And then look at this here. Police return vehicle with human remains inside. Families of NS shooting victims allege. This is just from a couple days ago, too. What a tall tale they're spinning here. Human remains. 2 families of victims of Nova Scotia mass shooting are launching a proposed class action lawsuit against the RCMP that questions not just how the force handled the rampage, but its actions in the weeks that followed. The lawsuit covers a range of criticisms previously raised about the tragedy, including police communication. But it also questions staffing levels, notification of families, and alleges a vehicle seized as evidence was later released to a family with human remains still inside. What? The province of Nova Scotia. I mean, these people. Really? 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 So the RCMP gave a vehicle back to a family that had body parts in it? You cannot make this SHAT up. Province of Nova Scotia is also named as an intended defendant in the case. 22 people were killed. How does the province become the province of Nova Scotia? Now calling to the stand, the province of Nova Scotia. It's going to take a long time for it to get up on the stand. Anyways. 22 people were killed by the gunman dressed as an RCMP officer during the rampage that started in Portapique, Nova Scotia on April the 18th and continued through several other rural counties or communities the next morning. We think there is a great deal of importance to the proceeding, says Sandra McCullough, the lawyer with Patterson Law in Truro. Remember Truro? It's like 2,300 people, and they had these tanks rolling through the streets. This story stinks to high heaven. I mean, it stinks so bad. Do you remember some of the characters? Do you remember the guy that was like doing the whole... Remember, there's no such thing as crisis acting. Look, YouTube community, it makes me so angry that there's people out there that actually believe that there's crisis actors. But there was a guy that was kind of trying to sob or something about his wife that allegedly was killed, and she was a nurse, and they kept showing her face with her face mask and her glasses on, and he was talking about how she had to strip naked on the porch before she came into the house to hug her children because of Kobe. Do you remember that stuff? They showed that. In our hearts forever, or is it in hearts forever? But yeah, what do you think about this? And if you're from Nova Scotia, you should leave no stone unturned. You should, I mean, because this, I mean, it affects all of Canada, by the way. All of Canada, because everyone, the gun control, the militarization, the surveillance grid, all the solutions that they bring in, right? That's the one they claim was killed. The police state, the militarization of the police. Again, the white crazy white guy with all the guns sort of thing. And you know that massive amounts of gun control has been proposed, and they're trying to. Trudeau signed all these executive orders, and they immediately banned, like, what was it, like 5,000 types of guns. It was just totally illegal, right? So all these people around Canada have these guns that are now banned, and they have I think like 9 months or something like that to turn them in or whatever. It's unbelievable what's going on, folks, and we need to have all the answers about this. I mean, if the RCMP is involved in a massive plot, if they're involved, or this, I mean, it seems diabolical. Like, to me, does it seem like to you, and I'll ask you this, I'll ask everyone listening, do you think, and especially if you're Canadian, you think the RCMP would actually get involved in setting up a massive slaughter? Does that make sense to you in order to bring in gun control and all this stuff? Or does it seem like maybe the whole thing is a theater kind of thing, and that this guy was just set up to be the bad guy sort of thing, and he was paid in advance? Or would you put the Maclean's thing where it's, boy, it's kind of fishy that a guy that was just paid $500,000 by the RCMP actually went out and killed a bunch of people, including an RCMP officer. You know, whatever the real story is here, whatever it is not what they're telling us at all. So if you're in Nova Scotia, in fact, you're in Rainbow Unicorn Land, in fact, everywhere, it's a one world, right? The United States should pay close attention to this, because a lot of what they say is Canada's got it right. Whenever Canada does the Orwellian gun grab sort of thing, CNN and New York Times and all the Washington Post all come out and say Canada is the model. So be paying attention to what they do in Canada, Rainbow Unicorn Land, and how it's going to be used as, the problem, reaction, solution sort of thing. So yeah, this is very, very bizarre, this one. There he is feeding a bear Tostitos. I didn't see that one before. Oh, the bear might just say, you know what? The crackers alright, or the chips alright, but I'm going to go for the full meal deal sort of thing. I don't know. It's pretty hilarious. You gotta wonder about this, and if you know, I mean, they'll show you stuff like this. Nova Scotia, if you don't know this, if you don't know how effing hilarious the whole Ottawa thing was, and the Moncton, and many of these other events, if you don't know how fishy these things are, you wouldn't know, because all my videos have been taken down, but believe you me, holy moly macaroni. Like, if you saw what I exposed back in 2013, 2014, dealing with those shootings, you would never, ever look at the news the same again. Trust me. But they don't allow you to show that type of stuff anymore. Instead, you see stuff like this. And then you see, vehicles, grainy potato cam footage, and strategic sort of photos to make you buy into the story, buy the whole narrative, and these types of demonstrations. So there's a lot to question. So I'd like to hear what your comments are on this. I'd like to hear, especially if you are in Nova Scotia or the Maritimes, or anywhere in Rainbow Unicorn Land, or anywhere in the United States, anyone chime in. And what have you seen, and what else do you think about this? What do you think about this Gabriel Wortman? So do you think that, I mean, it's pretty clear he's an RCMP agent, right? Informant, or whatever you want to call it. And they paid him a huge sum of cash March 30th, 33, according to the story. And then a couple weeks later, he goes full psycho. I don't know. We got a caper here, folks. Anyways, I'm not going to waste too much time with this one. I know it's important, but everything else that's going on is outweighing the whole thing. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, obviously, on this, and I hope maybe you can come and support me. Don't allow me to monetize anything, so if you like my work and you want to support the channel, the Patreon link's in the description. Huge thanks to everybody that supports this show. You guys are amazing. What do you think about this? Leave your comments below. Let me know anything you know, anything that you see, any esoteric stuff or symbolism or dates or numbers or anything that with this, because it's quite a caper, this one. And I think it kind of flew a little under the radar because of all the Kobe stuff that was going on and Trump and everything else now. And since you've got the whole George Floyd shenanigans happening, it's pretty nuts. Anyways, you guys are the best. Hope you are having a really nice weekend and chilling out, keeping cool maybe, and ain't wearing no stinking mask. Anyways, see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy, folks.